Hey, what's up with it, guys? Hey, welcome back to another video. Now, this is going to be a kind of a guide, but a breakdown and an explanation of Implosion and how it works and kind of the math behind it to help you guys better understand it. I get this question a lot, and I felt like it'd be easier just for me to make a video that I could point to kind of go over and explain the numbers and if and when you should be using Implosion. So that's what this is. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Now, first and foremost, I'm not going to be going over any of the legendaries. I'm going to make a specific video for the Implosion legendary itself. So feel free to check that out if you're more interested in that. This is kind of a better understanding of actually using our AOE and being able to use Implosion effectively and kind of understand exactly how it works. Now, first and foremost, I had mentioned this in one of my initial videos going over Warlock and Shadowlands, but we have a passive ability that we learned, and it doesn't actually show up in our spellbook, so I can't point to it, but our Imps in Shadowlands, I think this is at like level 52 or 54, become more efficient, meaning that they cast 6 fireballs over their lifespan instead of 5. This is pretty significant because each fireball effectively is a percentage damage reduction on that imp when it is imploded. So back in BFA, it was basically 20% per fireball. Now, since there's 6 fireballs over the lifespan, it's about 17% per fireball because you're dividing it by 100, or you're dividing 6 by 100, so, or 100 by 6, I should say. And so it's 17% reduction per imp imploded per fireball that they've casted over their lifespan. Now, you don't need to focus too much on that because you're not really going to be watching that too closely. But the point being is that the longer imps are out and shooting their fireballs, the less damage they're going to actually do when they implode. So there is some value to imploding imps immediately, and there's also going to be times where you're not going to want to implode the imps immediately because you actually want them to get their single target casts off. Now, over the course of their life, here, we'll show just with one imp here. Let me get rid of these. We'll show just with one imp here so you can see. Over the course of their life, the imp's going to shoot 6 fireballs. For me, with my gear, it's around 110, 115 damage per fireball. Obviously, that's a crit. But so if we have 6 fireballs, we times that by 6, it's going to be in the ballpark of 650 damage, right? Over the course of all of those fireballs land over the lifespan of that imp, that's roughly what the damage is. Now, if we cast one imp and I go ahead and implode right away, before it can get any casts off, it does 560 damage. So you'll notice this is about a 15% DPS loss when we're talking about the overall damage done. It's not really DPS, arguably. It's kind of like damage done. But the main thing that's important to understand here is when you're hitting 2 targets, that implosion is hitting twice, assuming neither of them crit, for basically 1100 damage per imp rather than that 650 number. So as soon as you get into situations where you have more than one target, Implosion is arguably going to be a DPS gain, or at least something you're going to be wanting to try to weave in. Now, in addition to that, and just those overall numbers as far as how that works, you also want to be aware of your global cooldowns. You don't necessarily want to be casting Implosion after every single handed Gul'dan because it's going to become very GCD heavy doing that setup. You're going to be spending one global on Implosion for every 3 imps, whereas you could potentially be spending 1 global for 6 imps or 9 imps or 12 imps potentially, right? So you want to be conscious of that because it's not all equal and you don't want to just spam Implosion every time you can. The imps are going to be doing good damage anyway, and you want to make sure, depending on timing wise, you want to be maximizing how many imps you're actually summoning via Handle Gul'dan and how many imps overall you're imploding over the course of a fight in an AoE situation, not necessarily imploding every single time you can. I am going to go ahead and cover the Dreadstalker, like Dreadlash from the Shadows rotation here in a second a little more thoroughly because that's kind of our main one here. But the last thing I want to touch on before we go over that is the way that imps interact with Tyrant. Now, I'll show you here. Take my word for it. I have tested this before I'm making this video, but I'll implode these guys here so you can see. I'm going to cast one imp and I'm going to Tyrant, right? And Tyrant's going to extend that imp's lifespan by 15 seconds, right? So you can see these arrows I have here tracking. It's hitting for 30 seconds basically, but see if I implode this imp, even with it having an extra 5 or 10 seconds of lifespan up, you would think that that damage would basically double, and it does not. So what that means is that the extended duration from Tyrant is giving you no value until it gets basically to its last 6 casts when it comes to imploding. So what this means is that when you're using Tyrant from an implosion perspective, now keep in mind this is not relevant to if you're using the implosion legendary. There might be times where you're going to pop to try and get that haste, but I'm talking just numerically from implosion itself. You are not going to want to cast implosion with your imps up as they've been extended from Tyrant until they get closer to actually expiring. There's going to be certain situations if you have a massive AoE pool where you're going to go ahead and implode anyway just because it's a DPS gain. However, my point is that you're not actually gaining any damage from implosion when it comes to your Tyrant, aside from extending those initial imps and basically having 15 seconds to build up more imps and doubling the imps you can get in that latter part of that 15-second window. You ideally want to let the duration of Tyrant expire, let Tyrant go away, and then once Tyrant disappears, you can basically implode and gain full value of the extended time of your initial imps that were up when Tyrant were summoned, as well as the imps that you have just summoned. So in a perfect world, watch for your Tyrant. Right when your Tyrant expires, you can go ahead and cast Implosion, and that's going to be the best kind of bang for your buck as far as overall DPS goes. Again, there's going to be situations and times where you're going to be imploding anyway, but just talking numerically, mathematically, you're gaining no value from imploding in the duration of Tyrant itself because that extended duration of the imps is not basically woven into the numbers of implosion itself, and it doesn't scale. So you're basically just exploding imps that are going to do the same damage when you implode them in 15 seconds. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Again, any of this stuff, ask me questions down below, leave them in the comments if you have them. Now for the talents here, I'm running Dreadlash and From the Shadows. Okay, so this is our go-to setup when it comes to AoE for Mythic Plus, right? General consistent AoE setups. And a lot of people don't really understand how to use this effectively as far as maintaining our AoE DPS. So I'll show you here. We're going to pretend like we're just in a fight in a scenario. We're going to have 3 imps up. As soon as I cast my Dreadstalkers, I'm going to implode immediately, right? It's my next global. Then we're spending this time. You see we have the buff up there that's counting. We have like 8 seconds left. I basically have that time to get another implosion out. So I'm not going to be able to get another Hand of Gul'dan out, so I'm going to go ahead and implode off this cast. I've gotten 2 implosions off during that time. Now going into this second Dreadlash window, you can see I have a lot more imps, right? We've got 6 imps up because I had 2 procs, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to implode immediately. I'm going to also have a Demonic Core proc that's occurred, and I should be able to get 2 Hand of Gul'dans out here on this end of this window, spamming Implosion right before the buff falls off, right? As you're going and you are in, whoa, sorry. As you're going and you have more AoE going on and you have, you know, demonic core procs happening over the course of a dungeon, and you have a few of these going, you can easily be getting up to 6 or 9 imp implosions. Point being is that you generally are going to want to implode immediately the next cast after you have your Dreadstalkers to get rid of any imps that you have up. Then during that Dreadstalker window, you're going to try to build up as many imps as you can, and then implode one more time at the end of the Dreadstalker window. Then you have enough time, the imps that you cast basically while you're in between your From the Shadows debuff windows, you're going to be trying to build up as many imps as possible, cast Dreadstalkers, and then implode immediately, and rinse and repeat that over and over again. Point being is you don't want to implode outside of those windows because Implosion is Shadow Flame damage, so it's going to be getting a 20% damage amplification from the Shadows debuff. You also want to be able to utilize building those imps up to maximize that debuff and maximize your implosion damage, pairing those two together every time that you can. The other thing you can do is if you go and you're out of combat, you can basically be doing the same kind of burst setup because your imps are going to be surviving for a period of time outside of combat, and then you can go straight into a new pack once you've got shards or whatever, Dreadstalkers, and implode right away. And this is another way that in between pulls, it's very common to be able to finish a pull with 9 imps up, and then you can just go Dreadstalkers and implode right away, get a Hand of Gul'dan or 2 out, and then implode again, then build up imps, Dreadstalker, Implosion, and rinse and repeat, and do that over and over and over again. Now, last but not least is on my weak auras here. I did cover this in my UI add-ons guide, and there's a lot of variations to the different weak auras, but you'll see here on the bottom, there's these arrows that are counting down that are going right to left. These are the lifespan of my imps. So once these arrows hit, assuming I stayed in combat, it's kind of buggy if you go in and out of combat, but assuming I stayed in combat, it's the lifespan of my imps. So this is a good tool for me to know when my imps are about to fall, if I either want to try and extend them with a Tyrant, or if I either want to try to implode them before they die off. Because if you implode them, again, if you're hitting more than one target, it's overall a net positive when it comes to your damage. Hopefully this helps. I'm going to be trying to post a lot more Mythic Plus type stuff and just overall use cases of just DPSing in general, because I know a lot of people have questions as far as PvE, Mythic Plus, all that good stuff. So I am going to be uploading some of that stuff as well in the future, but I wanted to make this kind of diving into Implosion specifically and explaining it a little more thoroughly for you guys, hopefully to clarify any confusion that you guys may have if and when you should be using Implosion. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys. Hit that sub button if you guys enjoy any of the content, want to catch more of it, or be notified when the streams go live. And like always, thanks so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for all the support, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.